Today, we're talking about a place that completely, and I mean completely, flipped our understanding of the ancient world on its head. It's a site so old, so mind-bogglingly complex, it basically forced us to rewrite the first chapter of human civilization. Its name is Göbekli Tepe. For generations, we thought we had the story figured out, right? First, people invent farming. Then they settle down in villages. Those villages grow into cities. And only then, when they've got all this extra food and stability, do they get around to building huge, grand temples. But what if that whole timeline is backwards? What if the temple came first?
To really get how wild this is, you have to understand the timescale we're dealing with. Göbekli Tepe goes back to around 9600 BC. Okay, so that's almost 7,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid. It's so ancient, it makes the Roman Empire look like it happened yesterday.
So, how in the world did we even find this place? Well, the story of its modern discovery is almost as incredible as the site itself.
And it all begins right here. Not out on some windswept desert hill, but in a dusty, forgotten storeroom in a museum in Turkey.
The year is 1994, and a German archaeologist, a guy named Klaus Schmidt, is just poking around the museum's collection. He stumbles upon these weird statues that had been written off as, well, not very important. But Schmidt saw something that everyone else had missed. He got a hunch that he just couldn't shake. See, he'd worked at other really, really old sites in the area, and he recognized the style instantly. These weren't medieval. No way. They were from a much, much deeper past. And he just knew, he had to find out where they came from. So, following this trail, he ends up at this remote hill that the locals called Göbekli Tepe, which literally means Potbelly Hill. Farmers knew about it, sure, but nobody had any idea what was actually lying just beneath the surface. And when Schmidt got to the hill, he saw these stones sticking out of the ground. Now, earlier surveys had just dismissed them as old gravestones, but Schmidt, he saw them for what they really were. They were the tops of enormous, perfectly carved T-shaped pillars, hinting at something huge and ancient that had been deliberately buried. So what exactly did he and his team find buried under Potbelly Hill? What was down there? What they dug up was just staggering. Not one stone circle, but at least 20 of them. We're talking about hundreds of these huge T-shaped pillars, some of them over 16 feet tall, and they're covered in these incredible, intricate carvings of wild animals, foxes, boars, snakes, vultures. But here's the real kicker. They found zero signs of anyone living there. No houses, no ovens, no trash pits. And the people who built all this, they were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers. They hadn't even invented pottery yet, let alone farming. And just remember, all of this was happening almost 12,000 years ago. The last ice age was just ending. It's just mind-blowing. This discovery didn't just add a new page to the history books. It forced us to basically rip out the first chapter and start over. It totally flips the script on how civilization even began. Okay, so this is a story we all learned in school, right? Step 1, humans invent farming. Step 2, they settle down in villages. Step 3, with all that extra food and time, they build complex societies and eventually temples. It makes sense. It's a nice, clean, logical progression. But Göbekli Tepe suggests the total opposite. Here, it looks like nomadic hunter-gatherers first came together for some kind of ritual. Then, they organized this massive workforce to build this gigantic temple complex. And here's the craziest part. Some archaeologists now think the reason they invented farming was to feed the hundreds of people needed to build the temple. Religion might have actually created agriculture. This is what some scholars are calling a revolution in the mind. It's this idea that the really big change wasn't about technology, it was about ideas. It was a shift in consciousness. A shared belief, a common story, had to come first. That's what allowed thousands of people to work together and build something impossible. That paved the way for, well, everything. And if you think it ends there, the story gets even more complex. Göbekli Tepe isn't just one site with one mystery. It's really just the tip of a much, much bigger iceberg. So, using Göbekli Tepe as a kind of map, archaeologists have now found over a dozen other similar sites, dotting the landscape, a whole network they're calling the Stone Hills. This means Göbekli Tepe wasn't some fluke. It was likely the center of a vast, sophisticated, and completely lost culture that we're only just now discovering.
And this leads us to a really weird paradox. We always assume things get better and more advanced over time. But at Göbekli Tepe, it's the reverse. The oldest, deepest layers have the biggest, most complex, most artistic pillars. As time went on, the structures they built actually got smaller and simpler. It's like their ambition, their grand vision, was slowly fading.
And then you have the biggest mystery of all. After using this place for about 1,500 years, the builders did something unbelievable. They buried it, the whole thing, on purpose. They backfilled every single one of those massive circles with tons and tons of dirt and rock, preserving it perfectly. But why? Why would you bury your own cathedral? We have absolutely no idea.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? Why does this one spot on a hill in Turkey matter so much to us today?
Well, for one, it completely shatters our old image of the brutish, simple caveman. These hunter-gatherers had incredibly rich spiritual lives. They had complex mythologies. They could organize huge projects that would be a challenge even today. It suggests that maybe the need for a full belly wasn't what made us civilized. Maybe it was a shared idea, that very human need to come together for something bigger than ourselves.
And here is the most incredible part. Everything we've talked about, all these history-shattering revelations, they come from excavating less than 5% of the site. More than 95% of it is still under the ground, just waiting.
And that really leaves you with the final question, doesn't it? If a place like Göbekli Tepe, something that completely rewrites our story, could stay hidden for 10,000 years, what else is out there? What other huge chapters of our own story are still buried right under our feet, just waiting to be read?